Welcome to today's deep dive, where we'll be exploring the fascinating life and philosophies of Ramon Ang.
Ramon Ang.
Yeah, the fourth richest man in the Philippines.
Wow.
And for those who maybe aren't super familiar with the Philippines rising to that level of wealth, there is no small feat.
It's a country that's had its challenges, for sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
But what makes Ang so interesting to us is that his whole approach to success really throws the typical billionaire playbook right out the window.
Yeah, our source material is this great interview with Ang, where he shares some pretty unconventional, I think you'd say unconventional views on wealth and business and life in general.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy who shows up to this interview in casual clothes, even slippers.
Yeah.
And it's not a put-on. It's like a deliberate choice that really sets the tone for everything we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, this frugality that we're going to see is a recurring theme with him.
Yeah.
And it shows how he really prioritizes impact over just lavishness. He even eats the same food as his employees, drives older cars, avoids the whole luxury brand scene.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, look, true wealth isn't about the bling. It's about what you do with what you have.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
And that really leads into how Ang actually defines success.
Yeah.
He doesn't measure it by his bank account, but by the positive influence he has on people around him.
I like that.
He actually says, and I'm quoting here, the success in life measurement is, oh, I'm happy because I was able to help my friends get good jobs, or those kids are able to go to school.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It is.
Yeah, it really makes you think, if more CEOs should be thinking that way, focusing on impact over just the bottom line.
It's a very refreshing perspective for sure. And it's not just talk. He's known for his extensive philanthropy, especially in education and healthcare.
Oh.
And he does it all without needing the spotlight.
It seems like genuine generosity is just woven into who he is.
Yeah.
And that carries over into his work ethic, too. Oh. This guy is incredibly dedicated, spending long hours in the office, working Sundays, you name it.
Absolutely. But it's not just about putting in the time. Ang has this remarkably proactive approach to problem solving that I find really interesting.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Sure. So he tells this anecdote about Araneta Avenue flooding.
Okay.
And, instead of passing the buck, he goes out and investigates it personally.
Wow.
And, what he finds, a contractor had totally messed up the drainage system.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like a natural thing. It was just somebody messed up.
Exactly. It was human error.
Wow.
And this just illustrates his hands-on style.
Right.
Whether it's dredging rivers or overseeing the repair of, heavy equipment.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to get into the nitty-gritty.
He's not just the guy in the ivory tower.
No.
He's down in the trenches making sure things get done.
He is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this ties into his belief in investing back into the Philippines. He gives this piece of advice. He says, don't take your money in the bank. Money needs to circulate so that there are more jobs, more businesses, and the country can progress.
That's a bold statement, especially considering some of the challenges the Philippines faces. Do you think it's risky investing so heavily in a country with those dynamics?
It's definitely a long-term game, for sure.
Right.
And that leads us to some of his major infrastructure projects, like the Bulacan Airport.
Okay.
But it's not just an airport. His vision is for it to be a whole logistics hub.
Oh, wow.
To attract the kind of just-in-time manufacturing that could transform the region.
Like what kind of
I
manufacturing?
think electronics, semiconductors, maybe even electric vehicle production.
So he's really aiming to put the Philippines on the map as a global manufacturing powerhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And then his plans for food security are another example.
Wow.
He's expanding poultry production and even exploring ways to tackle the high cost of rice, which is a huge issue for a lot of Filipinos.
So he's not just building airports. He's trying to ensure people can afford to put food on their tables.
Right. He sees the connection between these issues.
That's really impressive.
It's a holistic approach, for sure. And this brings us to something really interesting.
Okay.
Despite all this focus on business and nation building, Ang never loses sight of family.
No.
He emphasizes instilling values like humility in his children.
Humility. That's interesting for a billionaire to really focus on.
It is. And there's this great story about his youngest son, Jacob.
Yeah.
After graduating college, he wasn't given some cushy executive position.
Right.
Instead, he was sent to work in a provincial plant, living and eating with the employees.
Wow. That's a far cry from how some billionaire offspring live.
It's a powerful lesson in empathy and understanding the realities of most Filipinos.
Yeah.
And Ang stresses this idea of treating everyone like family.
Okay.
Cultivating respect throughout his companies and his personal life.
It makes you wonder if that's part of the secret to his success.
It very well could be.
Yeah, maybe fostering those strong relationships is what enables him to take on these huge, ambitious projects.
It's definitely worth considering, and this emphasis on respect leads us to another key aspect of his worldview.
Okay, what's that?
Loyalty.
Loyalty.
Yeah. Many of his employees have been with him for decades, some even over 40 years.
Wow. You don't hear those stories too often these days.
No, you don't.
Especially in the corporate world.
Right. And there's this incredibly moving story about his driver, Eddie Mariano.
Okay.
When Ang was battling COVID-19, Eddie refused to leave his side, even though it meant, putting his own health at risk.
Wow, that speaks volumes.
It does.
About the kind of loyalty he inspires.
Exactly. And Ang himself emphasizes how crucial loyalty is to him.
Okay.
He even values it over intelligence or skill when it comes to business dealings.
It's refreshing to hear someone prioritize human connection and trust over just raw talent.
Absolutely. But of course, no story is without its complexities.
Right.
And in Ang's case, we need to address the controversy surrounding the Bulacan airport.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that.
And the accusations that it was contributing to flooding in the region.
Yeah, this was a major point of contention, with critics really pointing fingers at Ang and his company.
It was, and Ang didn't shy away from it at all.
So how did he respond to those allegations?
Well, he addressed it head-on in a congressional hearing,
Okay.
using maps to demonstrate that the airport's location wasn't the root cause of the flooding.
So he was basically saying this was a pre-existing problem.
Exactly, a problem that had been ignored for decades.
Right.
And he even went a step further and committed to cleaning those rivers to mitigate future flooding.
Wow. Regardless of the airport project.
Regardless of the airport project.
That's a pretty bold move.
It is.
It suggests that he's genuinely concerned about the well-being of those communities.
He is.
Even if it means, taking on this massive, costly undertaking.
Absolutely, and this is where his engineering knowledge comes in.
Oh, right?
He wasn't just offering like a vague promise.
Right.
He had a detailed understanding of the hydrology of the region and a plan for how to address it.
So he was able to back up his claims with some serious technical expertise.
Exactly. And it's this combination of business acumen, engineering know-how, and a deep commitment to the Philippines that makes him so compelling.
Right? He's not just a billionaire businessman.
No.
He's a problem solver, an innovator,
Yeah.
a passionate advocate for his country.
Yeah, he really defies a lot of the stereotypes we have about the ultra-wealthy.
He does, and that's what makes, exploring his life and his philosophy so interesting.
Absolutely.
He challenges our assumptions about success and reminds us that true wealth is about more than just money.
It's about the impact we make.
It's about the impact you make on the world around you.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's fascinating how Ang seems to blend this sharp business sense with a genuine concern for the people around him.
Yeah, and you see it in how he raised his kids, too.
Right.
Didn't want them growing up with a sense of entitlement. He wanted them to understand hard work and respect for everybody.
We talked about Jacob working in the plant,
Right.
but there's also a story about his eldest son, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Ang used to send him to work in a mechanic shop every summer.
Wow.
And get this, he made Paul eat lunch with the mechanics just to emphasize that everybody deserves to be treated with dignity.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your job is.
Right.
Everyone's the same.
Exactly.
That's a really good way to instill those values.
And that respect extends beyond just his immediate family.
Oh, yeah.
He mentioned that all his children were raised to call the household staff Ate and Kuya,
Right.
which, for those unfamiliar with Filipino culture, are terms of respect for older siblings.
It's like creating this extended family atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you can see how that might contribute to the incredible loyalty he gets from his employees.
This loyalty thing really seems to be a cornerstone of his philosophy.
It is.
He even said he'd rather have a loyal business partner who's not the sharpest tool in the shed than a brilliant but untrustworthy one.
It speaks volumes about how he values relationships.
Yeah.
Trust and loyalty are really paramount to him.
It's almost like he's building a network of interconnected families, not just companies.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that might be one of the secrets to his success.
Right.
Having a team of people you can absolutely rely on.
Absolutely.
People who are in it for the long haul.
That has to be incredibly valuable when you're trying to do what he's doing.
Right, taking on these massive projects.
Definitely. It provides a level of stability and continuity. You don't see that often,
Yeah.
especially in today's business world.
And speaking of ambitious, we haven't even gotten into his passion for infrastructure
Oh, yeah.
and his grand vision for the Philippines.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, so he talks about this dream of having highways connecting Manila to all corners of the country,
Uh-huh.
like Larag in the north, Matanog in the south, even reaching Sorsogon. And it's not just roads. He envisions bridges connecting Matanog to Samar and Allen in Light.
It's a whole network.
Imagine you could drive from Manila to these far-flung provinces without the current hassles.
It would change everything.
That's the level of transformation he's aiming for.
He's a big thinker for sure.
He really sees infrastructure as the key to unlocking economic growth and opportunity.
And he's not afraid to invest massive amounts of money in projects that might take years, even decades, to fully realize.
Right, and he sees the Bulacan airport as a way to attract foreign investors.
Right.
Creating this hub for just-in-time manufacturing and assembly.
It's not just about tourism.
Right.
It's about bringing in industries like electronic semiconductors, potentially even electric vehicle production.
So he's connecting the dots between infrastructure, foreign investment, job creation.
It's a very sophisticated long-term strategy for the Philippines.
Absolutely. But he's also acutely aware of the challenges facing everyday Filipinos.
Yeah.
He talked about the high cost of rice being a major concern for many families.
Food security is huge.
Right, and he believes the Philippines lacks adequate post-harvest facilities.
Oh, interesting.
Which leads to a lot of waste and drives up prices.
So it's not just about growing enough food, it's about what happens after the harvest.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
He described seeing rice being dried on roadsides in the provinces.
Oh, really?
And he estimates that this could result in losses of up to 20%.
That's a staggering amount of food.
It is.
Just gonna waste.
Yeah, and it directly impacts the affordability of this staple food for millions of people.
That's a really important point.
So it really underscores the importance of investing in agricultural infrastructure.
Yeah.
Not just, flashy airports.
Fundamentals.
Right, and Ang gets that.
Yeah.
He suggested investing in things like dryer silos and more efficient rice mills.
To reduce those losses and bring down the price of rice. It shows he's thinking about all levels of the problem.
And he even touched on how food trends might be shifting.
Oh.
He mentioned the increasing popularity of fast food chains.
Yeah.
Offering alternatives to rice-heavy meals.
Right. So he's really thinking about the problem from multiple angles.
He is. It's fascinating how he synthesizes all this information.
He's not just a business leader. He's an observer, a systems thinker.
Yeah.
Always trying to connect the dots.
And it reminds me, he shared his own eating habits.
Oh, yeah.
And they're surprisingly simple for a billionaire.
What does he eat?
He often eats just a cup of rice with soup, some fish, and a few eggs.
Really?
He even jokes that people tease him for eating so much.
That's funny considering the extravagant lifestyles of so many billionaires.
I know, right?
Good for him.
I admire his discipline, but I wouldn't say no to a fancy meal now and then.
Me neither.
He does make sure to get his exercise, though.
Oh, good.
He walks a lot and, as he put it, talks a lot.
Well, he certainly does talk a lot. We've got a lot of material to cover.
I know, right?
You can tell he really enjoys this stuff.
His energy and enthusiasm are contagious.
They are.
He mentioned that he finds joy in the challenge of fixing things.
Yeah.
Whether it's a broken-down car or a complex business problem.
I can relate to that.
He even gets involved in the design and repair of heavy equipment used in his companies.
Wow, so he's really hands-on.
It's that hands-on approach that sets him apart.
Right. He's not just delegating, he's immersed in the details.
There's this great story about how he boosted the efficiency of dredging operations.
Oh, really?
By personally observing the process.
Wow.
And suggesting changes to the way materials were handled and transported.
So he was like out there on the barges?
He went from seeing a few hundred cubic meters of material removed per day to thousands.
That's amazing.
This anecdote really reveals his engineering mind at work.
Yeah, he sees a problem and he immediately starts thinking about how to optimize the system.
It's not just about throwing money at a problem. It's about understanding the mechanics and finding clever solutions.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And he doesn't shy away from the environmental aspects of his work either.
Good.
He talked about his commitment to cleaning up the rivers in Bulacan and Pampanga.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that neglect has contributed to flooding problems.
He's taking responsibility.
He's even willing to spend billions of pesos of his own money to dredge those rivers and remove debris.
That's serious dedication.
It demonstrates a sense of responsibility that goes beyond just business.
It does.
He's taking a proactive approach to tackling environmental problems that impact entire communities.
And he's thinking long-term, too.
Right. He wants to install a bathymetric survey system to monitor river depths and identify potential blockages.
That's really smart.
Before they become major issues.
It's combining technology and proactive maintenance to prevent future problems.
Exactly. And he also stressed the importance of working with local government.
Right.
And securing the necessary permits to make these projects happen smoothly.
Collaboration is key.
He specifically praised Governor Dennis Pineda of Pampanga for being supportive and understanding the complexities involved.
It shows he's not trying to be a lone wolf.
Right.
He recognizes that real progress requires partnerships and a shared commitment to finding solutions.
And it brings us back to the Bulacan Airport controversy.
Okay.
Let's delve into how he responded to those accusations.
Yeah.
And the steps he's taking to address concerns.
It's a key part of the story, for sure. So when Ang went to that congressional hearing about the airport and the flooding, he came prepared.
Okay.
He explained that the airport was situated, near Manila Bay, surrounded by the Mekong and Capiz rivers.
Right.
But crucially, he pointed out that this location was far from the areas hardest hit by the flooding.
Okay, but some critics were still skeptical?
Right.
How did he convince them that the airport wasn't to blame?
He brought maps to the hearing.
He brought maps?
Yeah, he showed how the flooding originated from a completely different set of rivers, the Anga, Ipo, and Bustos.
Wow, so he was really showing them visually.
He was.
Okay.
And he highlighted that the worst flooding was happening in areas like San Miguel Bulacan, which is much higher elevation.
So he was using data and visuals to really counter the accusations.
He was, and what's interesting is the irony he pointed out.
Okay, what's that?
Here he was, a guy spending billions of his own money to dredge rivers and mitigate flooding, and he was being blamed for a problem that had existed long before the airport project.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if some folks were just looking for a scapegoat.
Yeah, maybe someone to blame for years of infrastructure neglect.
Right.
And Ang didn't shy away from calling that out.
For him.
He questioned why no one else was taking responsibility for the decades of inaction that led to these recurring flooding problems.
So he wasn't afraid to ruffle some feathers.
Not at all.
Challenge the status quo.
He even used this example that made me laugh. He said, imagine someone blaming him for flooding in Cebu or Davao.
Right, those are cities hundreds of miles away.
Exactly. It was a humorous way to highlight how absurd it was to attribute every natural disaster to him.
Just because he's a successful businessman known for taking action.
Right, and that speaks to this misconception that some people have about him.
What's that?
They see him as the gas station president.
Gas station president? What does that even mean?
It's a term he actually used in the interview. It basically means they can't see beyond his success in the petroleum industry.
So they're underestimating him.
They are thinking he's a one-trick pony.
But Ang has consistently defied those expectations.
He has.
Throughout his career.
He started as a mechanic and built this vast business empire.
Right, encompassing everything from infrastructure to food production.
He's always proving his doubters wrong.
And what's so impressive is that even when he's faced with these accusations and criticisms, he doesn't get bogged down in negativity.
No, he always pivots back to solutions.
Right. Despite his frustration, he reiterated his commitment to cleaning the Bulacan and Pampanga rivers.
Yeah, emphasizing that it would benefit everyone regardless of the airport.
It was a gesture of goodwill that showed he was truly invested in the well-being of those communities.
It was.
Even those who were critical of them.
And he emphasized the importance of maintaining those rivers, not just cleaning them once.
Right. He talked about the need for ongoing dredging and monitoring to prevent future blockages. That long-term thinking again.
Right. He's not looking for quick fixes.
He's investing in sustainable solutions.
He is, and he understands it takes more than just money.
Right.
He highlighted the importance of working with local officials like Governor Pineda, who was willing to collaborate.
To navigate the complexities of these projects.
Exactly. It shows he's not trying to be a lone wolf.
Right.
He recognizes that real progress requires partnerships and a shared commitment to finding solutions.
And this brings us back to the Bulacan Airport and why he's so passionate about it.
It's not just about building a bigger, fancier airport.
Right.
It's about creating a catalyst for economic growth.
For the entire country.
He sees it as a way to connect the Philippines to the global economy, attract foreign investment, and create jobs.
Thousands of jobs.
He talked about how it could reduce travel time and costs, making it easier for businesses to operate.
And for Filipinos to connect with the rest of the world.
And he sees the airport as a key component in his vision of transforming the Philippines into a manufacturing powerhouse.
Wow, so it's all connected, this intricate web of infrastructure investment and job creation.
It is. He's playing the long game.
Thinking decades ahead.
And that's what I find so inspiring about Ramon Ang.
Me too.
He's a testament to hard work, discipline, and a belief in the potential of the Philippines.
Yeah, he's not afraid to challenge the status quo, take risks, and invest in the future.
His story really challenges our assumptions about success.
It's not just about accumulating wealth. It's about using that wealth to make a positive impact.
On the world around you.
Well said. And that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Ramon Ang.
What a journey.
I know, what a journey.
What stands out to you most from all this?
You know, for me, it's his unwavering commitment to the Philippines.
Yeah.
Despite his global success, his heart remains in his homeland.
He sees the potential there.
He does, and he's dedicated his life to unlocking that potential.
That's a great takeaway.
And it makes me think about that quote we discussed about measuring success by the positive impact you have on others.
Yeah.
Ramon Ang embodies that.
He does.
So as we wrap up, here's a final thought for our listeners.
Okay.
What does Ramon Ang's story teach us about the potential for positive change through both our personal and professional endeavors?
That's a good one.
It's something for us all to think about.
As we navigate our own paths.
Right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving to make a positive impact on the world around you.